Bem-vindos a Inteligências Lúdicas, meu nome é Rodrigo Manique, estou aqui com Lepê Salgado, entrevistando o designer Paul Dennen. Hello, Paul.
Hello, good to see you.
Good to see
Great
you,
to see you, great to see you. Thank you very much for being here to talk about what we will talk about today. Many things.
I'm excited to talk.
Paul, you live in Colorado, right?
Yep, Colorado, nice. Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. Nice. And tell me, you have a family from Portugal, don't you?
I do. Well, my grandparents were born in Portugal, so I'm half Portuguese. Unfortunately, I don't know much Portuguese, but it's limited to things a grandmother might say to their small, impish grandchild, like "call me Kala." Eat and shut up was what I learned the most, because I was a very talkative child at the dinner table.
Oh, very, very, very nice, very nice. Could you tell us a little bit about your previous experience before becoming a board game designer? What did you do before?
Yeah, so I was a software engineer, a programmer. Went to school for computer science and had some jobs doing like financial software, medical software, that kind of stuff. All the time, I was designing games in my spare time. Like I just always loved designing games, whether it was programming a game or building out board games for me and my friends to play.
Nice. And what was the first game you designed, board game you designed?
First ever board game I designed was
yes.
I mean, that was probably, when I was like 7 or 8 years old. Like that was probably like a flicking, you flick the pencil, and that's how far your thing can move. So my brother and I would play like flicking games against each other, where like you have tanks and planes, and certain vehicles could move fast, so you get to flick twice to see how fast they go. So we would just write on paper. So I don't know if it counts. The first real one I designed was with a buddy of mine in the mid-90s called Heroic Endeavors. It was like a modular fantasy war game where you put these big hexes together, hexes within hexes, and you'd fight all these fantasy armies against each other. And that was really fun. We actually we went to Origins convention in Ohio and tried to talk to some publishers at the time. It's funny though, because like at that time, games like Settlers of Catan came out and just kind of blew me away, because I was building from this old school late 70s, 80s perspective of building like little, hex grids with tokens on them and pushing around cardboard, right? And then I saw games like Settlers of Catan and it blew my mind. And I realized, okay, the industry is changing. I'm going to need to change too.
Can you tell us a little bit about your creative process? When does it start? What are your priorities? Is the team that motivates you? It's the mechanics that motivates you. How does it start?
It's a great question. It's not so simple for me, like because I always want a game that has both sides. Like I want something innovative on the mechanical side, but I also want something very resonant from a thematic perspective. So I could start on either side, but I always very quickly bounce to the other side. So if I have this idea about a particular theme, I will very quickly search through for mechanics that fit that theme, and I'll just throw it away if I can't find one. So basically, I just churn through a ton of different ideas, and if I find a cool mechanic, I'll think, all right, what is a theme that meets that mechanic? And often I don't find one. So I have like notebooks filled with bad ideas, I would say, or ideas that aren't quite good enough for me because I want it to be strong on both sides. So I know that's kind of not really a great answer, because it's not there's no definitive way to start for me.
And have you ever revisited your notebook and resurrected a previous idea that was a bad idea in the time, but now you thought of something that idea that I had 5 years ago Have it ever occurred with you?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for your subconscious, like having an idea, even if you couldn't follow through on it within the first few days, a week, it's still there in the back of your head. So one example would be Clank, if you want to talk about that. Like the first idea about Clank came out, that was like 2013 or so, and I didn't have the core mechanic of pulling cubes from the bag. It was more about a simultaneous game where we are simultaneously in the dungeon trying to escape from the dragon. And I think when I prototyped it, I had they had a 20-sided die, and I would say, put your 20-sided die to a certain number. That's how noisy you are. And then the cards would tell you to like increase your clank, and like you would just put up, raise the value on your die. And it wasn't that fun. It was okay, but it wasn't that fun. It wasn't nearly as fun as I make Clank, I put it in the bag. So that was an example of like 2 years later, I was like, wait a minute, I shouldn't have used a die, because then it became much too deterministic of who was the loudest. Because I basically had a rule, I think at the time, when the dragon attacked, whoever was the loudest, you're getting damaged, and then you take the die and you half it, or I can't even remember the actual rule. But I was thinking about bag building at the time, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, this would be great for that idea about making noise. So that was an example of it. It was just in the back of my head, and then I was thinking about something else, put 2 and 2 together, and bingo.
And Clank was your first published game.
First published game, yeah.
And how do you face the responsibility? It's a huge success. How was it to face the challenge doing your second game? It was it was something that you took it light, or it was something that was
Yeah. So first of all, I want to preface and say that Clank was not just my game, but I would call it all of Direwolf's game. Our whole team brought to bear on it, because like the art made it really fun. Other designers and developers made it really fun. So I think as a team, we were a bit worried. We thought about that, like, hey, how do we weren't expecting the amount of success we had with Clank. So we were worried about kind of the sophomore slump syndrome, like coming out with your second game and it not being that great. I think I guess if you count Clank in space, we took the conservative route. Like we just followed up naturally on Clank. So that wasn't that scary. But for the next game, the first non-Clank game was a little scarier. Like, and we were just like not sure what to do. I mean, you may not even know. Like we came out with a game called Eternal Chronicles of the Throne. That I would consider my first non-Clank game. And it didn't do tremendously well. I'm really proud of it. I think it's a really fun deck builder where you battle against each other using kind of CCG battle mechanics. But it was also a small game, so it was like maybe less of a risk. It's not a big box game like something like Dune Imperium. So I definitely felt the pressure, especially after that game was, kind of not received particularly warmly. I was like, all right, we've got something to prove here as myself personally, and as a team. Like let's aim high again. Let's try to come up with something great. And we did other things as a team, but Dune Imperium would have been my next one that I was really focused on, trying to kind of knock out of the park as a bigger game.
And how we are talking about now Dune Imperium. How did the idea for Dune Imperium come to life? Were you contacted by the IP owner, or already had the idea in mind?
Mm-hmm. I think there was a meeting at a Gen Con a few years ago, maybe like Gen Con 2018, something like that, where we met Genuine Entertainment, a guy who basically had the license to it, or knew of the license. I don't know all the business details, but that's how we found it. We basically, he sought us out, I believe, because he liked Clank so much, right? And he loved Dune, and he wanted to know if we were interested in doing Dune. And my boss, who was the one talking to him, said, "Heck yeah," because my boss is a big Dune fan, and he knew that I was a big Dune fan too. So it was kind of a match made in heaven.
And the process of creating Dune. You took your inspiration from the book, from the movies, from both. Did you have an inside scoop of what would be coming?
Yeah.
How was the process of creating?
Yeah, it was tough actually. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that happened where, it didn't come together that quickly. The first, 6 months or so, we put together some prototypes that weren't great. Like they were good. We could have released a deck. My first attempt at making a deck builder Dune game was a good solid deck builder, and it even had some echoes of what was to become in Dune Imperium. Like it had the four factions, right? The Bene Gesserit, the Fremen, the Spacing Guild, and the Emperor as neutral factions that you could ally with slowly during the game. But it was more of a pure deck builder, and it was good. But like I said, we wanted to aim for a home run. We wanted to do something great, so we took more months and went back to the drawing board and looked for more options. And yeah, and the other thing that was really scary about Dune Imperium was that there's already a famous, beloved Dune game in the world, of Dune board game.
Yeah.
I own it; it's on my shelves back there, and we couldn't just, we didn't want to just do the same thing. We wanted it to be different, but we also wanted it to feel like Dune. So that was a really big challenge, to find something else that people who love Dune would also love, even if they love the other thing. So yeah, I mean, we could talk more about that if you want.
Yes.
Please. Yes.
Yeah, I guess like the other game took the approach where they took those four factions and then added them to the Atreides and the Harkonnen to make 6 possible factions for players to play. And I just didn't want to do that, right? Like that had already been done. So I kind of said, all right, the most logical thing to me is to be the great houses of the Landsraad. Now some of this gets a little bit more into the books and the understanding that maybe people who watch the movies don't fully understand, but the Harkonnen and the Atreides are only 2 houses out of many in the Landsraad. So we took an approach of like, hey, this is more of a what if scenario where you can be a leader of a great house and change the course of Dune history. Like we basically took all the stuff that happened leading up to, I forget the date, like 10,191 or something like that. But said like we could change, let the players change what happens from here on out. Maybe some other house had sway with the Emperor and convinced the Emperor to let them take the fiefdom of Arrakis. And maybe Gurney Halleck was hired by someone else, not Duke Leto. And that's where, the challenge of making a deck builder comes in too. Because a deck builder, you want players to have agency over what they're buying and crafting, right? But a lot of people who love Dune might say, wait a minute now, why is Gurney Halleck working for the Harkonnens or House Thorvald, So, that was a challenge. And it was, I would say it's a risk, but we felt that the fun was there. And when you look at any individual card, like Gurney Halleck or Lady Jessica, they tell a story that makes sense for them, even if they're not working for Duke Leto, right? Even if they're not on the Atreides side.
Yeah.
Because if you put everybody on the Atreides side, this game is not going to work as like all the houses of the Landsraad, because there's just not enough content from the source material to populate all the other houses. So in a way, deck building then made sense. Like, well, it's a what if deck builder.
Yeah, it blew my mind and many people, the way the game is played. Because in this game we have many factions: currency, war, Cold War, politics, backstabbing, and much more. And the question was before this, how was the development and how did you spice it to become a huge success?
Yeah, I think one of our first pitches, when we were asked if we wanted to do a Dune game, we sent like over like a small PowerPoint showing that we knew Dune and we wanted to make it. And I think it opened up with, I made up like an imaginary quote by Thufir Hawat, and it was something like, a Dune game needs spice, sandworms, politics, treachery, betrayal, combat, and I just like listed all these things because the main point was it's not Dune unless you have all or at least most of these things. Like Dune is not simple, right? Dune is a complex thing. Dune has, if you are true to the material, I think it has this place. You just need to be true to the material and include all the things that people expect. You can streamline things, right? Like I certainly streamlined the sandworms. I'm not going to lie. Like there could have been a game more about the sandworms having having to avoid the sandworms, that kind of thing. But that didn't quite work for a worker placement deck building game. So being true to the material, trying to get all the things in that feel like Dune, and then really it's just coming up with an innovative mechanic that's going to kind of like hopefully blow people's minds, hopefully like really impress gamers, right? Like the three of us probably, when we get a game, we want it to show us something new, right? So that was what the mechanical side brought to the table, like the whole worker placement. The thing I'm probably most proud of in the game is that it's a worker placement game that has a combat twist, where most worker placement games don't really have you fighting against each other, and most worker placement games don't really say going first is a disadvantage, which in Dune it can be a disadvantage to go first because of the way combat works and the way you want to have position on the other players and be aware. And that's why the Mentat is such an interesting mechanic too. You are paying to delay to get position on seeing what other people are doing. And to me, that feels like Dune, right? Like the whole structure of that mechanic of like, who's going into this combat? Am I ready to go? All right, I'm going to jump in now. I'm going to take over this. Like that feels like it came out of, Frank Herbert's books. Like it's about watching others and maneuvering.
Yeah, it's all every decision we make, they are important. They are difficult decisions. Should I get more cards? Should I reveal now? Should I try to make the alliance now with some and avoid this one, or should I make more money? Solaris to get the third agent. Everything counts, and difficult decisions. You have succeeded. Bullseye in this game. It's not me who I'm saying. Oh, it's the community.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's definitely been a bigger success than we expected. I'll say that. Like right, like because part of the challenge with Dune, I guess the double-edged sword of what I was talking about before, how you have to put all this stuff in, is it could be too much, right? And like the three of us, we're gamers. We're used to a lot of games with a lot of mechanics, but we also wanted it to be more approachable and, dare I say, family friendly. Like it's arguably on one side or the other, depending on your family. But I've heard a lot of positive feedback from family, from parents who have said, like, I'm playing this with my kids. They love it. So that's great. It's certainly not as simple as Clank. Not that Clank is simple. But we did try, it's easy to learn, hard to master. It's the old cliche. It's a cliche for good reason, because it's a good idea. You should make your game easy to learn and hard to master if you can.
Yes, it makes the game more approachable for a wider variety of people. And it makes the game, the tactical aspect of the game is more important than knowing a lot of rules to exploit the holes in the rules. You have to think, and everything is laid out before you. It's your decision that makes your success or your failure. It's
I like games that have intuitive strategic complexity. In other words, this game is fairly complex, but it makes sense. The way it is structured makes sense to me. Therefore, I'm having fun because like things make sense. Like it's tough. I don't know what to do necessarily, but I understand some of why I might want to do A versus B. intuition, goes a long way, I think.
You think that when you marry in an intelligent way your mechanics with your theme, you allow it to happen? Because
Yeah.
you can put a simple rule, but if it doesn't make sense, you don't remember that the rule exists. You think that one of the reasons you managed to do it well is because you had that in mind, that you have to marry your team with your mechanics.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. And theme goes a long way, not just in once you're in there trying to strategize, but even just teaching a person how to play the game. With Dune, it's a little bit of it. Kind of depends on whether you know the book or not. Like, I think people who know the book and the movie will pick it up faster because they'll understand. Like, of course, if I go to the Spacing Guild and pay them a lot of spice, I can bring in my troops to fight on Arrakis. That makes perfect sense. For other people, that's more of a, oh, okay, I didn't know that the Spacing Guild would do that. But at least even the words make some sense. Like the Spacing Guild, you're paying them to bring your troops to Arrakis, and people will get it. The Bene Gesserit are a little confusing if you don't know the story. Like, what's going on there? Why are they collecting secrets and doing selective breeding? But if you know the books, that makes perfect sense.
The card, the voice, and the person who was playing, and we explained, look, the voice is something that you have the power to make someone do something that you want, but you have an intonation, and the book explains, really, oh my god, I'm gonna use, and who is this doctor? You okay? And people were involved in the game. And I have to tell a short story. I was playing Hugo, is a friend of mine who bought the first game we played. He was introducing me the game. I was playing, and in the middle of the game, he asked me, I was with my cell phone, very bad. What are you doing, Rodrigo? What are you doing? I'm buying my first game. I'm buying my two. I bought during the game.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad that the voice has resonated with people. That card was challenging to design as an individual card because there were other versions of it that felt even more like the voice, but they were kind of oppressive to play against. Like, if you're told what move to make, for example, or forced to do something, that's not very fun, right? So I tried a couple versions that were extremely resonant with what the voice means, but not very fun mechanically. So we landed at this place that feels kind of like the voice in that it's stopping you from going someplace that at least got close enough to feel resonant with people.
Very nice.
I also feel like I forgot to mention that working with Legendary on this game was great because as far as getting us into the theme and into the movie, we got to see a document, like basically a Bible, that showed us some images from the movie, like a year before the movie came out, and that's obviously why we were able to do the art the way we were, that resonated with the movie. But it also helped, from my perspective, sell the game internally to some of the team members who hadn't read the book. They could see how cool this world was because Legendary kind of had prepared all this cool material.
That's so nice.
Me and Rodrigo, we like that word of game design, and reading through your journal, the journal that you put online. What a great material to read. It's unfortunately it's in English, and some people in Brazil won't be able to enjoy as we did. There are some questions that would be easily answered for someone who had read the journal, but it's very very good to be able to see how the mind of the game designer works and how he overcomes the obstacles that he faces. So I would like to ask you about the expansion. It's about to be released in Brazil.
Yep.
Did you the expansion? It was born with the game, or it was something that you managed to create before the game was ready?
Oh no, yeah, definitely not. It did not come first. It was not a case. I don't know how many board game designers do this, This was not a case of me having designed too much stuff and then some of it got carved out for the expansion. To me, that it wouldn't have worked well for pairing up the movie to kind of line up with the first. For pairing up the board game with the first movie, because Ix is really not part of the movie. So it would never even entered my mind in that first design phase to do Ix. So that really started probably, what is it? It's January 2022 now. That started probably, fall of summer/fall of 2020 during the pandemic. That's we had already shipped the game, right? Not shipped the game to players. Players didn't get it until December of 2020, but we had already, it's already being printed, right? So that's when I started thinking about the expansion, and that's when Rise of Ix started to form.
What part of the game did you like the most working on?
I guess I have to say I'm a system designer at heart. Mm-hmm. I like creating foundations more so than content. So for me, the most fun is creating the foundation and then seeing what other people can do with it, right? Like I don't want to prescribe gameplay to players if I can help it. I want to provide tools to gamers so they can craft something that they feel like they did. That mm-hmm. I didn't tell them what to do. It's a little tricky because obviously as a game designer you do need to design things that work well together and that lead you from one thing to another. But I guess for me the most fun was coming up with a new system of the deck building meets worker mechanics, like worker placement. So like coming up with symbolic things on cards that tell you where you can send a worker. That stuff like that is always, for me, because I'm more of a system designer, that's what I love the most. And it's fun for me even at that time to be thinking about the theme, right? Like why does this system match the theme, right? So like, oh, well, one of the symbols is going to be a spice trade symbol. Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do with a spice trade symbol? You're going to harvest spice and maybe sell it or ship it off world to people who want it, but then there will be other symbols and symbols that match the factions of the world. Like, to me, just even looking at that atomic level, you can tell stories, right? The fact that like I can show you a symbol and say this is the symbol for the Bene Gesserit, and it even kind of looks like a mask. This was Legendary's doing, not ours. Like we took stuff from them, although we may have modified the Bene Gesserit symbol to look good on cards. But yeah, for me, I love games and worlds with factions and with structure that represents those factions.
Very rich.
Rich, yes, that's a good word.
You were fortunate enough to be offered to work with a theme that you like, that you love. Yeah. But if you have the choice to choose a theme, any IP, which one would you pick? Or if there is already a game, which one would you like to do differently? What would it be?
For me, it's more about quality than specifics. Mm-hmm. I have a few kind of favorite, TV shows, books over the years that I would pick. Babylon 5 comes to mind. It's one of my favorite.
Valen's name.
In Valen's name, yes. I'm rewatching it. Just finished season 3. Got to the part where they reveal Valen. It was great. It's every time it's great. MASH is a game that a TV show that I've loved because I'm kind of old school. But I don't know that I could make a MASH game. That would be hard. Has there been a great MASH game? There's been a MASH trivia game.
Yeah, the trivia.
So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, Lepe. I basically care more about a rich, kind of like what Rodrigo just said, a rich world that can be brought to life with a game and make the players feel immersed in that world than any specific theme. Like, you know, I think we were talking earlier, like, I'd love to see some more, you know, Brazilian city games. Why do all of the other countries in the world get games based on their cities? Why not a Rio game or something? So, you know, any theme can be good as long as you know, take it seriously, and the players, for me anyway, I want a little bit more of a meaty experience. Like, for some light games, I don't know that theme matters all that much, other than being an approachable, inviting theme that gets you in the door. A lot of times a light game, you know, it's cute. It's not really getting me immersed in the story, and that's okay. So I guess my mind is going from your question straight to the meatier games, the games where the theme is going to be represented by the mechanics.
I always liked old West games.
Oh yes.
Could you tell us what games are you currently working on? Any plans for the future? Or could you tell us a little bit about your upcoming game, Wild Tiled West?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've got some things that we're working on that we can't talk about just because, you know, it's still too early. We're always going to be looking to make more expansions for, you know, things like Clank, you know, popular games. But Wild Tiled West is a really interesting one because it's our first, not quite our first, it's one of our first non-deck builder games. So it's a tile placement game, takes place in the Old West. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one hitting the shelves and seeing people's reaction to it, because my hope is that people will love it because of the same kind of attitude towards caring about both the mechanics and resonant theme, the way those mechanics work. So Wild Tiled West probably goes it certainly goes a little heavier on mechanics than, you know, many tile laying games, because you're laying down tiles for reasons, right, that line up with the Wild West. So you're going to be like laying down tiles that have cows on them, and you're going to try to wrangle those cows, right? And you're going to have, you know, sheriffs and bandits, you know, fighting each other, that kind of stuff. So it's not going to be a complicated game, but it's you know, it's medium light, maybe medium. Yeah, I don't know how to describe weights of games exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's not important. The game has to be fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's light, if it's heavy, it's ultra heavy. The game should be fun. Something occurred to me. You said that your first game, you were about 8, playing with your brother. Do you still play with your brother?
I do. We haven't lived near each other for a while, but we play Dungeons and Dragons every week online.
Nice.
So yeah, I've got a group of old friends. So I grew up on the East Coast of America, and I still play D&D with a bunch of my buddies from college and my brother. When the pandemic started, I started a D&D campaign to kind of, you know, because I was trapped at home and I wanted more contact with people. So, you know, it had been years since I had played D&D in this case, and so I kind of got the group back together to play D&D, and my brother was invited as well, and we've been having fun ever since.
You're playing the 5th edition?
5th edition, yeah. I'm thinking about changing to a different system, but I've always loved D&D, so I'm okay with 5th edition. It's a little hard for me because characters feel like superheroes in a sense. Like it's hard for people to die in 5th edition, and that's a little weird to me. It doesn't feel like when I used to play in the 80s, when things were more deadly and scary, I guess. But it's still fun.
That's so nice. During the pandemic, we were unable to. Okay, Tabletopia. I'm not too much into Tabletopia. I think they are nice tools to play. And fortunately, there are some board games that come with solo mode. When Dune was announced, people is there a solo mode? Okay, I recorded one very fast game showing them how to play, and the people were amazed. Wow, you play with the cards and they represent each one the houses. Okay, you draw one and the cards you have. Okay, no, but we don't have to follow the map. We follow the cards on top, and on the bottom we have the swords that will help during the war, the battle, and it helps us to learn the game as well.
Yeah, so solo was kind of came last, as I imagine a lot of solo modes come, because you kind of need to set the foundation of the game first, before you figure out how solo works. And it kind of came together fairly quickly. I kind of chatted with one of the developers, Justin Cohen, who works closely with me on all things Dune Imperium, and basically just said, do you think this would work to just like flip cards and that's where they're going to send them? And yeah, why not? Why not? So like it's not a very thoughtful way for the enemy to play, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's obviously more random, but you can, but it's fast, and I think that counts for a lot, right? Like if I have to like flip through a book to figure out how my solo opponent is going to work, or like read tons of text on a card to figure out what they're going to do based on the situation, that just slows things down. So we basically figured out, hey, we can tune this to be challenging at a variety of levels, even if it's just flip the next card.
Yeah.
It's okay that it's not thinking like a human, as long as the challenge is a fun challenge, right? It just comes down to that. Is it fun? Well, it's just like music. Is this song? Do you like this song?
Exactly.
It depends with your opponent. What the opponent will do. If it's human, it can be more random than random cards.
Wow.
Unexpected. The movements are unexpected because when you play against a human, he's trying to do that. You are reading the cards. You cannot read because I was not expecting this. Destroyed my whole idea to play. It's very fun. I have more than 10 plays,
Wow.
10 games already. Very, very fun. Very fun.
We have a tradition here that we ask to our guests, our invited designers. That is, could you name 3 games that feels in your pocket, or because it's a very cheap game, or because it's a small box that you would have with you?
I guess I cheat by saying the contents could fit. Like I could put them in a smaller box because the contents would fit in a smaller box.
Yeah, of course,
you know what I mean? Some of the boxes are about this big, but inside it's not that
Good.
much. So I would say Biblios would be on there as a great game. It's just so compact. It's just a deck of cards and some tokens, and it's just a very condensed way of doing bidding, right? Have you played Biblios? It's there's 5 categories that you're trying to secretly like, and that's for me what I love about it, right? Like you have some public information about what people are drafting, but you also get, when it's your turn, you get to look at some cards and keep a card secret from the other players. So you never know, what did I just keep? Did I keep one of the blue cards? Did I keep gold? Who knows? So that's a great, quick, fun game for me. There's an old game that I haven't played in a long time called Veriteur. I think it's German for traitor, and it's just a card game. I think it's just a deck of cards, and you lay out cards in a circle, and there's ways of kind of picking sides. It's been too long for me to explain it, but if you look it up, it's a pretty interesting pocket-sized game. And then I guess I would probably throw in, if I could fit Raw in my pocket, I would say Raw, but I think it's too big. I think the wooden pieces are too much to fit in my pocket, and all the tiles. So I guess I'll just say like something like Magic the Gathering.
Could be.
it's just have a deck in your pocket, have 2 decks, one for you and one for a friend.
That's nice. That's awesome. Wow, what a night. We would like to, Paul, we would like to thank you very much for being here with us to share this your story with us, and thank you for bringing this game, Clank, and upcoming games as well, and to make us happy during the pandemic, to in family, to have the game here, to play, have fun during this harsh time. And thank you very much.
Love to hear it. It's the whole point of why I got into making games was to make people happy. So for people to just come out and say thanks for the happiness that makes my day. So I appreciate it to both of you for inviting me on and asking very thoughtful questions, and for enjoying the games and talking about the games. Couldn't make me happier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. It was a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. I will just hold on a second, please.
Sure.
Então, pessoal, estamos aqui com o fabuloso Paul Dennen, tá? Designer, que traz aqui a história dos jogos que ele tem criado, que nós temos aqui no Brasil, né? E agradecer muito o Lepê aqui por me ajudar aqui a fazer o bate-papo sensacional, excelente, tá? Muito obrigado a todos. Deixa seu joinha aí e acompanha que vai ter mais.